Football's coming home, folks. Welcome to the Scooter Pod. I'm the host of the Scooter. I'm your host, Bobby Howard, with you here to talk about the season opener now in Norman. I'm way too excited about this. I apologize. All of our thoughts are obviously with those on the Gulf Coast and everything. But honestly, we got football coming our way. And, I'm excited to go. This is a big week, a big surprise. And let's get this thing going. We're going to break down Tulane. We're going to break down the OU roster today. But let's start with the big news. Jameson, how shocked are you to see this thing coming? And how is it that we will be back in the Palace on Saturday?
It's going to be great. It's Western Carolina, great opening team to play against, but no, not that exciting. Tulane at least has some exciting for a home opener. Definitely excited about that. But we get the 11 a.m. kickoff to start. So, everyone's changing their plans last second, but I'm thankful that we get one extra home game for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, it is all, it is new football. It is more football. And in a season, and after 2020, I'll take anything we can get for sure. So this is very exciting. Ty, your thoughts on the shift and everything. Are you excited for Saturday?
I am. So I got two things. I'll just cold take myself. I was kind of looking forward to kind of relaxing, watching an OU game on TV to kind of ease into it. Not that I'm not disappointed at all in what's occurred, but I was looking forward to, us playing down in New Orleans. That would have been neat. Also, I'll just hit myself again. I am kind of surprised that it wasn't canceled, just because the nature of what caused it to be moved. But we got to be grateful for what we have. I am super excited for the game, and like you guys touched on, it's super neat to have. It's definitely not a marquee matchup, but it's cooler than the average home opener for OU. So Tulane still a big school, big team. They make a splash, pun intended, every year here and there. They got cool uniforms. It'll be a neat school to play and neat for OU when it comes to recruiting around that area.
Yeah, I mean, they are an American school. They're not a FCS situation. So this is a bigger opener. But there are a couple notes we have to make. Technically, Tulane is designated as a home team. They won't have the angry wave painted on the field, which makes me very sad. But there is a chance you might be rolling out in the white away jerseys on Owen Field, which would be very cool. The only time you see that is on the red-white game. But just a couple bits of information. This evening, we're recording this on Monday night. This evening, season tickets holders will have their chance to buy their tickets. $30 for just base lower level, which they're only selling lower level and club. $30 if you're anywhere in the lower level. $50 for suites and clubs, and students pay $20. So an affordable ticket if you can make it. If the season ticket allotment does not sell out, then we will go straight to. I guess there's a sale on Friday, which will be absolute madness.
$50, I think, right? Isn't it $50 for that Friday ticket, which is ridiculous too? The students will be firing hard in these $20 tickets. The resale market is going to be nuts. I can't even imagine. And think about this. This is 4 straight home games in September. How often does that happen? That is nuts. Most people, just like us, will be in Norman for 4 Saturdays in a row, which is nuts to say out loud.
The last time that happened was 2004. So this is a very, very weird, rare scenario. Last year, our fourth home game was Bedlam. So it is a total 180 for sure.
Yeah, we to touch on the tickets, that's kind of ruthless that they're selling the boxes and suites at $50, and then also just selling the general admission, whatever else seats also at $50. I guess it pays to be a season ticket holder for sure. I got the student tickets still, which is nice to ride it out. I honestly, I'll just throw it up on myself for the third time already. I kind of like the smaller, games. Just the lower bowls and night. It's a super neat. It really hammers home how unique of a game this is. So it's definitely we're living these sort of moving a game for Hurricanes, not necessarily a once in a lifetime like last year's Red River, but what a time to be an OU fan for sure. I think we're gonna say that all season, but even last season, all the difficulties that we went through, and then starting out this season, already dealing with some stuff. But it's what a time to be an OU fan, and I think it's gonna be a really really neat atmosphere just because the way it's come up.
Definitely, it's a surprise. It's like found money in a way, and Tulane is keeping the majority of the revenue, which is incredible. Great for them, and it was just the right thing to do in terms of money. The Green Wave have been practicing in Birmingham. That was never really going to be an option. They would not have made the gate that they're going to make here. So it was the right move for Tulane, the right move for Oklahoma. And I'm just happy they're playing football on Saturday, because for a moment there, it's looking a little bleak. So I'm excited. I'm ready to go. I can't wait to get back to Norman for sure, even with the reduced capacity. So let's go ahead and we're going to break down the roster, but I want to kind of get your thoughts on Tulane themselves. Last year, not a great year, went 6-6, but that 6-6 was kind of, marred by a lot of choking on their end. They had that, obviously they lost to Tulsa after that remarkable Hail Mary. They led 14-0 going into the fourth quarter there. They blew a 24-0 lead to Navy. So, that's a 2-game swing right there. They could have been 8-4 if they actually closed games outright. So is this Tulane team actually somewhat decent, Jameson?
I mean, they'll be more competitive than Western Carolina. I mean, we can say that without a doubt. But I mean, not too concerning. I don't know too much about the team and what they're returning, all that stuff and all those details. Just because it's OU and we should handle our business. It doesn't really matter who's returning whenever you're talking about a 6-6 team who's non-Power 5. So, but yeah, they were a team that they were kind of sneaky last year. They had a couple games that they kept close. Definitely, when we're paying attention to betting the spread, they were a team that really gave us a headache whenever they did show up in our picks. They would piss me off. They were a team that I wouldn't want to pick because they just were too unstable. So maybe they will have a couple of plays this game that will be surprising. They have that in them.
They have the return of Michael Jones, too. Michael Jones' revenge game.
Year 7 for Michael.
Yeah, I guess so. They returned 10 starters on offense, 6 on defense. So at least offensively, a seasoned-ish team. Pretty solid running back in Ty J. Spears in 2020. Ty, your thoughts on the Green Wave?
Yeah. I just had it pulled up. So an important note on last year, they lost most of their losses. So like you guys said, they were 500 on the year. So 50-50 win-loss. 2 of those were in overtime, and another 2 were by less than a touchdown. So, the teams they lost to, like SMU, UCF, Houston, Tulsa, and Nevada, teams that obviously are not on OU's level, but I think you got to think about it relative. I understand, new year, new teams for everyone, but relative to who OU constantly plays in season 1, this is a very good team. I will say, but it's a season 1 game. It's in Norman, and it wasn't prepared for. So I think even with the fewer people, I know we're talking about Tulane right now, but I think the away. The home field advantage for OU is going to be accentuated by the sort of snap nature of this game. So Tulane, I think, is a really good team. I think they're going to give us, in the picks this year, I think they're going to give us trouble like last year. But they're a really good team in terms of a season 1 opener for OU. So I'm excited, and I'm excited for Tulane fans that they get to come up here and play.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you have to kind of balance the fact that, on one end they've been scrambling, this whole week, but on the other end, you have these, it's like how we talk about the dead mascot games. When a team goes through hardship, I feel like that brings them closer together, makes them focus. They kind of have a fire under their ass. So Tulane's going to be playing hard. They've been through it this week. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. I think they're going to get a lot of, admiration on our end. It's going to be a situation where there is a lot of, talk about hurricane relief, and they're going to be treated very well as the visitor, not visitors, I guess. So I'm excited for sure, and I just really hope the best for that area. It's one of my favorite places in the world, New Orleans, and there are resilient people who have bounced back far too many times. It's not fair that they have to do it, but Louisiana, they just don't complain about it. They just get back up, get back up off the canvas, and they're fighters for sure.
Yeah, and I will say for Tulane, before we move on to OU, they have a rough schedule for them this year. They go and play some random team right after us, the Morgan State Bears, who I think is a extra from Friday Night Lights. But then they roll into Oxford in 2 weeks, and they got to play Ole Miss, and they got to go to North Carolina. They're playing Houston at home. That one's going to be rough. They got to go to Dallas to play SMU. They're playing Cincinnati, who's the top 10 team right now, and then they have to go to Orlando to play UCF. And those are the teams that they really got beaten by last year. So it's going to be a rough year for Tulane. So props to them for sticking to it and coming to Norman to play is not an easy thing, and they didn't have to. So no matter how the game goes, props to them for going through some stuff and coming out here to play. I know it's a business thing as well, but
for sure. I will ask Morgan State. I wonder if they're more or less real than Bishop Sycamore is, if you know what I mean. Shout out.
Yeah, so
that is the wildest story I've seen. We had to touch on it a little bit. Have you heard about this guy?
I have not, but I know that both of those schools are much realer than the 3-team conglomerate that is fictitious and commonly known as Purdue, Vandy, Wake Forest. Those don't exist.
Yeah,
there's no proof that they exist. No one's ever seen them in person.
Jameson, I'm sure have you been following Bishop Sycamore?
No, I actually haven't, but I'm just laughing because this is a cyclical thing, because last year Missouri State was this fake team that wasn't actually anyone, and here we go again with Morgan State. Why not just throw in just another very similar team?
Okay.
Ty just is like, no, screw Missouri State. I think he called them 3 or 4 different names throughout the whole season in reference to our.
I kept calling them Montana State.
Yep, definitely.
Which was from like the year prior.
Yeah, something like that.
I thought we had just not a home and home, but just a double home in Norman against the same team. I didn't know it was 2 different teams.
Okay, so I got to just touch on this Bishop Sycamore thing. So IMG Academy. If you know who they are, obviously Jameson does for sure because of
I know.
a lot of crude border stuff.
Best high school football team in America.
Yeah. So they played a team called Bishop Sycamore on Sunday. Well, the problem with Bishop Sycamore, apparently they're not a real high school. They faked their way onto ESPN. They're a group of ex-JUCO players who are pretending to be high schoolers who played IMG Academy and lost 58-0. And it slowly came out that just this morning, people are like, wait a second, this high school doesn't exist. And they also, for some reason, played a game on Friday night as well. They played 2 games in 3 days. They're like, what's going on with this? They jump deeper into it. Their coach has a warrant out for his arrest. And the team is just apparently just completely not real.
Oh my god, dude, that's amazing.
The funniest thing about that is they lost 58-0.
Yeah,
they're all former college football players.
They're all adults. They still lost. They just
to a bunch of 17 and 16.
That is legitimately amazing. That's like literally a plot line from like Blue Mountain State. Like I could see there being an episode where someone's ruled ineligible because they went to a not real high school and they turn out to be 40 years old.
I mean, it is just that is quite a story right there for sure, and it's just tailor made for the Scooter Pod.
That is amazing.
I also got to think IMG probably do, and they're like, let's just go roast them anyway. So we just need opponents. No one wants to play us to begin with.
Did the game actually occur?
Oh yeah, no, it went on it was played yesterday.
So the question is, before we move on, do you think that, because this is plausible with IMG, do you think that IMG just legitimately blew them out? Or do you think that there are people that are out there just to like take hits and do whatever and pad people's set? Because it sounds to me like it potentially hey, if you give us, 20 grand a game, we'll roll into town and we'll play you guys and let you guys, blow us up.
I mean, maybe because that was their second game in 3 days. I think they might just be riding around to different high schools and getting beaten up.
That's the type of team that OU typically plays week 1, to be fair.
Here's the funniest thing, is the name. What bishop would be named Sycamore? That makes no sense. There's no bishop that would ever be named Sycamore.
Yeah, and so I clicked on the CBS Sports article, and the ninth word of the article told me everything I needed to know. And for everyone that's not looking at this, which is everyone but me, the ninth word in that article is Ohio.
Yeah, I know. It's wild. It is absolutely wild. But
okay,
all right,
let's talk about OU. Unfortunately,
yes,
we have to move on from that.
We have to let's get down to business. I had to drop in.
I gotta say, the second most searched thing is there a GoFundMe page to help Bishop Sycamore? The second most Googled thing, which is amazing because they're also trying to scam people.
I think they probably have somehow worked the worked like the search engine optimization where it's like, we need help Bishop Sycamore, please.
Wait a second, there is a GoFundMe. They had a GoFundMe saying, help us, we're trying to start a football team. Oh, that's amazing. I love that.
God. Okay, this is really good. And honestly, probably deserved its own podcast. But anyways, let's dive in. It's time for our roster breakdown. We do this every year. And we have to start with the offense and a short discussion on the quarterback. Spencer Radler. Obviously, there's Caleb Williams as the second stringer, and our guy, what's his name? I keep wanting to call our third stringer Rusty, so I'm just going to call him Rusty.
Rusty Rucker.
Rusty Rucker. Rusty Rucker.
Rusty Griswold.
Old Rusty is out there, slinging the ball around. But I think we have to touch on this because I feel like there are too many fans out there who are like, I don't know about Spencer Radler. He seems like he has an attitude problem. He's not quite there yet. He turns the ball over too much. And I think we got to set the record straight. Spencer Radler is a really good quarterback.
Because people got tunnel vision from that Texas game. Because there's some fans out here. I saw some gooner that I sent in our text group saying that Caleb Williams should be the starter and Spencer Rattler was a joke. And Tanner Mordecai, of course, he won the job because if he would have SMU, because if he would have stayed, he'd have been the quarterback for OU. Like, what is going on here? Did you only pay attention to the game where they held out Spencer, which completely changed the whole mantra for the rest of the season, where we kicked ass the whole season with Spencer, and he was making balls, throwing balls to wide receivers who were dropping them over and over in Theo Weiss and Austin Stogner, where Spencer Rattler's stats would have been even better if he would have had his wide receivers catching the ball. It is absolutely ridiculous to think that the Heisman Trophy odds-on favorite should not be a starter. And I understand that's just one Gooner's thought. But still, people believe in Spencer because there's no better quarterback in NCAA right now, and it's not even close. Sam Howell is the next argument, and I'm sorry, he only got hyped because he put North Carolina up into competitiveness, but still, they are getting disrespect because he's not that good of a quarterback. He's a good quarterback. He could be a first-round quarterback, but he's not a number one overall in the draft kind of guy like Spencer Rattler is going to be.
Yeah, he's just a solid QB, but Radler, I mean, I don't want to use the comparison, but he is the closest thing to like a Pat Mahomes in college football right now. The accuracy, the arm strength, it's he is just a perfect quarterback right now, and I think he's going to take a leap. You've heard a lot in camp and everything about how he knows the offense a little bit better. Everything's been running smoother. He's been able to make audibles on the fly a little bit better. And here's the thing. This is his first true fall camp, had a true summer, a true spring. He didn't really have that last year due to COVID. So I think he's going to be a much improved quarterback this year. And that's crazy considering how great he was towards the end of the year.
Yeah, no, I think I think I'm not going out on a limb at all to say that of the three of us, I'm the most in tune with the Gooners. I was one for a little bit. Still am a little bit in the head. Just the fact that I'm a student prevents me from not being one. So I think I understand why they're saying that. And it's the spring game, because in the spring game, what we saw was Rattler at like 20% speed and effort, if that. He clearly was being held back by Lincoln Riley play call and effort wise, and also just individually. And then we saw, I would dare to say, because he's right out of high school, I would dare to say that we saw close to 90% effort, if not more, from Caleb Williams. So if you only watched the spring game and you weren't aware, if you didn't have any context to that, you were just, looking through tunnel vision at the spring game, I think it would be very easy to take away the thought that Rattler thinks he's amazing, doesn't want to put any effort in, thinks he's going to coast to everything, isn't that good, and that Caleb Williams is all that. Because we saw Caleb Williams going, really high effort, and Rattler very clearly, he was lower than coasting. And it's not a bad thing. It was clearly intentional, by Lincoln Riley is wearing the defense shirt and coaching him. So I think I can see where those takes are coming from. I don't think that they're as ridiculously gooner as some takes are. I think they're cold takes, but I can see where people are getting that. And I hope, if anyone is thinking that, like you guys have said, I would not be worried about Rattler at all. I know he is a little bit, more cocky maybe than we're used to, because if you go back with OU quarterbacks, we really haven't had a cocky dude in probably decades.
I can't think of one. I can't think of a single cocky quarterback OU's ever had.
Yeah, you have Baker, but Baker won the Heisman. So, and he was, constantly chippy, constantly the underdog for stuff he wasn't expected to. But I mean, you go back, Kyler was the most soft-spoken dude ever, and then Trevor Knight and Landry Jones and Sam Bradford and everybody else. So I understand Baker, but he wasn't in the same position, is what I'm saying. So I don't agree with the takes on Rattler, and I'm not worried one bit about his performance. I think he is the best. I think the second best is probably Bo Nix.
Oh, God. Here's the thing. Why it's Gooner? You say it's not that Gooner, and for people who are just now listening to us or haven't heard this thoughts, Gooner is your typical OU fan who has a burner Twitter that does not actually have himself as his profile picture, and he's got a picture of Bosworth or something, and his name's Sooner Bread 26 or something like that. That's that. Everyone knows, and he obviously didn't graduate from OU and all this stuff. If you didn't graduate from OU, you're an OU fan, that's cool, but don't go and make some anonymous Twitter account and just talk to high school athletes. That's a good one. What I'm trying to get at here is taking into the red and white game as some kind of statistic or barometer for who should be the better quarterback is ridiculous, because Caleb Williams was running around and nobody was even trying to touch him. And the majority of the reason why he looked good is because he was scrambling hard. You're kidding me? Come on now.
Yeah.
It is Gooner, but on the spectrum of Gooner takes that are out there, it's not far to one side.
What's worse? It's on the level of fire.
It's
on the level of fire Lincoln Riley after we lose one game during the regular season, calling into the sports animal. No, I think it's that level.
That's absurd. Saying that fire Lincoln Riley takes are at the same level of the spectrum as spring game based quarterback takes is absurd.
But you're saying essentially they're saying fire Spencer Rattler. Essentially is what they're saying.
I mean, really.
They're saying bench Rattler, and the same thing as fire Lincoln Riley. I think that is extremely similar.
So I was misunderstanding. I thought we were talking about people believing in whether or not there was a quarterback battle. I didn't know. If you're talking about people saying that we should fire Rattler, then I agree with you. That's ridiculous.
It's stupid. People it's just a better quarterback than him. That's ridiculous.
It's definitely not the biggest issue OU has on offense. And for that, let's talk about, let's segue to the running back position, where last week we talked about how that room was very thin, and now it's basically anemic at this point because Trey Bradford left, because he, I guess, definitely not colluded with LSU. And that leaves OU with 2 scholarship running backs, which I know a lot of people are trying to spin it as like, oh, like we've had, good players step up in the past. Look at, Dominique Whaley. Remember him? He was at a Subway. But here's the thing. That is an outlier. That is a rare situation. You can't just point to Dominique Whaley and be like, this will happen all the time. It's a tough situation. And OU is going to have to be very, very careful with how they use their backs because one injury can completely submarine that the running back room. So, Jameson, what's your take on everything? How dire is this situation?
It's in college, it's very concerning, especially for a team like OU that likes to play 3 deep running backs. And we've always been kind of frustrated about this in the past because, for example, there'd be times where you'd say, like, why is Brendan Clay getting so many carries? We should not be spreading the ball. Why is Chris Brown getting so many carries, if you want to go back a little bit? Like, yeah, they're competent, but we should be giving the ball to our number one backs. Comes down to now where we don't even have that as an option. And we're going to have to play 2 at the top. And I'm really concerned about Kennedy Brooks and his conditioning and how he's been treated in the preseason. Over the spring and the summer, they have been keeping him, not blue shirt, but maybe putting a cap on his helmet and trying not to touch him much. He didn't play, really at all, barely, in the red-white game. And then, I don't know how football ready he is because as soon as he gets in the games, he gets hits over and over and over because he has to as a number 2 or number 1 running back. Is he going to get hurt? The body is not ready for it. We've seen this with a lot with athletes that take a year off. They're more susceptible to injury. So I think it's a matter of when if Kennedy Brooks gets dinged up. I'm not saying he's going to go tear his ACL, break his leg, but soft tissue injuries like hamstring or groin or getting bruised up is very possible for a guy who hasn't been playing competitive football for the past year and a half. I think the big conversation that we want to lead into this as well is who is going to be the starter, the back on the first drive. Is that going to be Eric Gray or Kennedy Brooks? We talked about it in the preseason that I liked Eric Gray's tape so much, and I said I wanted to go out on a limb and make a bold take that I think Eric Gray is going to get the start over Kennedy Brooks, and I think that he's a better running back moving forward. And I think right now it's looking pretty clear. And I mean, I could still see Kennedy Brooks going out for the first drive, but I think the way we've heard about how good Eric Gray has been playing in the scrimmages, breaking off long runs, doing really well, and we've been protecting Kennedy Brooks, I would not be surprised to see Eric Gray as our primary number 1 running back.
Yeah, I think of the two, if I had to pick one to be better, I think it's definitely Eric Gray. I apologize. My dog is losing her absolute shit in the background. I definitely think Gray's probably has an edge on Brooks. And in terms of football shape, the only way to get in football shape really is to get action, get game action. And sitting out a year, that just means you have less time away from the more time you have away from the field, the harder it is to get back. And that's going to be an issue for Brooks. So maybe easing him back, leaning on Eric Gray might be the move here. But Ty, your thoughts on Gray versus Brooks?
Yeah, so I think one, the dude that is this, I think this is going to sound weird initially, but I think the dude that is the main or the best running back might not be the guy getting the most carries, and it might not be the dude going out there first. And I think the way you have to think about running backs, especially with Lincoln Riley's offense, in my opinion, is much more akin to how you would think about a baseball pitcher. Your best pitcher might not be your opener. He might not be the guy, that's out there at the start of every game. And I think that's maybe reasonable with running backs. I think of the two, if we're looking at Brooks and Gray, I think that Gray has serious potential to be a serious NFL running back, which, I think that statement should speak for itself. I'm not saying that Kennedy Brooks doesn't, but he, like you guys talked about, he has been out, and that can affect a running back, especially you're a high volume guy there at running back. You're taking hits constantly. You're delivering hits, and you're having to really, really put in effort. If you're not running the ball, you're blocking, and you're really grinding on every play. So I can see Eric Gray being our main guy. I expect him to be our main guy. But I can see us trying to conserve him because of that. But I think there's a very interesting situation for Riley and the coaching staff, and for for everyone to decide, because I don't know that we really want to risk Kennedy Brooks that much either if he's questionable. We don't want to burn him out either. So that's where it matters that we have these very highly paid coaches, very skilled coaches. These are the challenges that really separate the coaches that are guys that get an elite job and can kind of perform from the guys that are truly elite in and of themselves. Is if you can manage the sort of economy of personnel, or this personnel management and load management here. So I think that I don't like OU being in this situation. I don't think it's as bad of a situation as everyone expects. I expect Kennedy Brooks to come out there and really surprise everyone, and I think Eric Gray is going to be I think he's going to be amazing, especially in OU's offense with OU's line. So I'm not as worried as a lot of other people are, but I'm excited as a fan of the game to see how our strategic plan is at the running back, because I think it is very interesting, and this is where it really matters that we have these really good, really elite, really highly paid coaching staff. I think it's going to be really cool to see what they throw out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jaden, I want to ask you real quick, because you can't just have those two guys. Who else would you have get touches? Maybe a little Jeremiah Hall action. Weatherman Jaden Knowles is an option back there. Not a lot of great options, but who would you go with?
Yeah, I think Jaden Knowles, just the way he showed in the red versus white game, he was definitely interesting with getting a touchdown, and obviously he's been getting a lot of publicity in the news, especially Lincoln Riley talking about him and him being the meteorologist with OU. But he's not the only guy. Jeremiah Hall, I'm not ready to say he's going to come in like Dimitri Flowers, because I don't think he had some carries in the past, but he's nothing to where I think we'd be that desperate. We've shown that our walk-ons with Jaden Knowles, he looked like he's competent, and he had a very good high school career. He just didn't get D1 offers. The guy has talent. We also have Todd Hudson. If you remember him, he's played a lot in the past, in these past couple of seasons. If you're watching Scrap Time, who was that 5'7" tiny running back who'd come in and just scrap for extra yards at the end of games? Todd Hudson was that, and was a guy that was decent. So I'm not ready to say that we're going to get many halfback carries moving forward. I think we'll give the walk-ons a chance first.
I like Jaden Knowles as well. Like you said, Jameson, Jaden Knowles is also listed at 5'7", which means he's potentially even 5'6", but he's listed at 197, which it means that he's at least in the 190s, which puts him as the bulkiest dude by far. The other guys that are heavier than him are significantly taller. So I think that could be a factor if we're talking about just throwing someone out there, to be not necessarily cannon fodder, because he's running back, but a dude that we can put out there and reliably manage some load, especially if we're just talking about handoffs, through the middle and to get hit. I could see us going with the biggest dude, and I think that's Jaden Knowles, just based on the stats.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Just a guy to kind of help out a little bit. Again, he is a little stockier, but as we've seen with Ramondre Stevenson, that can be okay. So overall, we'll see how it plays out. Maybe there's another guy who will show up that we have never seen before. Another, another surprise. OU is full of them. So let's move on from probably one of the weaker sides of the offense to probably one of the best. The wide receivers. Talk about a deep, just crop of wideouts. It is hard to pick one that might be the best. But let's start with probably, in my opinion, the biggest question for that wide receiver group. Jameson, I think this is going to be a big bounce back year for Jaden Hazelwood.
Yeah, that's the big key. We didn't get to see much of him in his optimal form at the end of the season because he returned from ACL injury very quickly. And I told y'all whenever we were coming back, we're going to see a lot of straight routes and we're going to see a lot of him jumping well. But I don't know how well we're going to see him, making cuts. In the red and white game, he got open and his big time plays were catching and making, you just got mossed plays. But we need to see more of him in slant routes. We need to see more of him testing that lateral mobility on that knee. Has he gotten over it mentally? The majority of these recoveries with how medicine is right now and ACL is a lot of the mental part. And is he running confidently with 100% of his effort? And it seems like he's been doing really well in spring, but every single report that people have talking about how they did in spring is whenever they did great. They looked amazing. But no one ever says someone looked bad. So let's actually see what they realize. The wide receiving crew has a lot of people looking to prove something. Jaden Hazelwood's going to come out and say, I was the number one wide receiver in this class. I'm a superstar. I'm a number one, first round pick kind of talent, which he should have been. Theo Weiss, can Theo actually catch the ball and get over, the drops? Huge question. And if he gets over the drops, I think he could be the number one guy in this system. Marvin Mintz, can he continue with what he's been doing? Is he just a one-hit wonder freshman because there was so much crap going around with our wide receiving core last year to where he was the only solidarity? Is he actually a Blendikoff kind of guy? Or is he just getting overhyped just because he was a freshman and his PFF grades were so high? There's a lot of questions, but plenty of talent that I'm not worried about.
Absolutely. And I'd like to play a little bit of a game here. I'm going to call it overhyped, underhyped. And I'm going to name off a wide receiver. And you tell me if they're over or underhyped.
Let's go.
This sounds fun. I'm ready for it. Let's start out with an easy one. Marvin Mintz, overhyped, underhyped, Jameson.
Over.
Ty, over, under.
Mark my words. Marvin Mintz might not go to the ceremony, will receive Heisman votes this year, period.
Man,
I think he is underhyped. I think, spoiler alert, I think he's going to be our main receiver. I think we're going to show out on offense, and I think that because of our inherent sort of weakness at the running back and our strength at the quarterback, Marvin Mintz is going to show out this year, and it's going to be his show in the receiver corps.
Let me defend myself before you go in, Bobby. I'm not saying Marvin Mintz is going to be a bust. I'm not saying that at all. I just think there's so many targets in this wide receiving core that if you do see some solidarity and actually catching the ball in Theo, that will give Spencer Rattler some confidence. And then Jaden Hazelwood plus Stogner being healthy. I think that Marvin's going to have those plays where he goes over the top, but he's going to be playing a lot in the slot this year. And can he turn it into a guy in the slot that is a Blendikoff winner? I understand all the analytics say that he was so great, but I just don't see the target share for Marvin Mintz to get all this hype like Devontae Smith got in the past.
I don't disagree with Jameson. It's going to become more clear when we touch on the other receivers here. I don't disagree with Jameson about Mims specifically because it is very diluted, and Mims had very, very, very high expectations. So for me to say that he is underrated, that's borderline ridiculous. It is by far the safest bet to say that he's overrated because his expectations were, star level, superstar high. So I don't disagree with Jameson about Mims. It's when we get into the other receivers that's going to be clear where Jameson and I disagree here.
Yeah, for sure. Next up, we got a freshman, Mario Williams, overhyped, underhyped, Jameson.
Here's the problem with that. It depends who you're talking. If you're talking about the people that are on message boards leading all these things, he's about normal hyped. But if you're talking about just your average OU fan, it's absolutely underhyped because I think the way that they've been talking about it, he's just been cooking people in this preseason. He's looking like a guy who should be getting playing time over some of these older wide receivers. He's going to be really special for time to come. He just gets off the line, separates, and will get you yards. Think Sterling Shepard, young season, where he would just get in, he'd get you catches, get you yards, and have some flashy plays. I honestly think that's what we're going to see from him this season.
A proper hype sort of deal. Okay, Ty, overhyped, underhyped.
I concur with Jameson. I think it's a draw here, and I will say that the dilution factor will probably affect him more as a freshman. So,
yeah, I think he's going to be a breakout star for sure. I think he might be. It's just because he's a freshman. That's the only reason he would be underhyped. But those who know, they know. Next up, not a wide receiver, but kind of a wide receiver, Austin Stogner, overhyped, underhyped, Jameson.
I say underhyped. Whenever he was in his prime and he wasn't actually, struggling with his catching, which is minimal, not Theo Weiss level, he was Spencer's favorite target. that was kind of Spencer's in the first half of the season, his, safety blanket. And I feel like there's a lot of stuff that obviously went at the end of the season whenever he went out in the Kansas game due to the getting a bacterial infection in his muscle due to the trauma. There's a lot that happened with him, and it's curious to see how he responds from that. But this isn't the same of an injury as, you broke your leg and you knew you made that cut on the football field, and that's what made you lose a bunch of weight and a bunch of muscle. He got hit, but there was no kind of snap. There was no kind of tear. I think he should be good to go moving forward. I don't think he's going to be like a Mackey Award guy. He definitely could be because I don't know too much about other than Charlie Kolar's dominant tight ends this year. I really like Stogner, and I think he's going to be a guy that can be a safety blanket for Spencer.
Definitely. And, until his injury, he was pretty good. He had a couple drops, but I think overall a very good target for Radler. Ty, overhyped, underhyped?
Concur with Jameson, under. He is, I think Jameson touched on the quarterback. I'm not going to touch on that. He didn't touch on Lincoln Riley and Lincoln Riley's playbook. We really value those sort of sneaky tight end and then fullback plays to really use the full spectrum of assets that we have out there on the offense. I think that he, like Jameson said again, it's not one of those medical things that gets in your head and you're worried about, oh my God, like, am I going to go out there and ruin my career? It was a freak thing and everything else. And then another way he's underhyped, nobody knows this. This is a Schooner Pod exclusive. That boy can code. I will tell you that. I sat next to him in a MIS class for however long a semester is. And my man knows SQL and databases and everything else. So shout out to him. I'm not going to admit to any sort of academic misconduct, but shout out to Austin Stogner and Tanner Mordecai, if you guys know who that is, for helping me pass MIS.
I'm just saying, Spencer Radler can't code.
Yeah, no, I can't. No, I know for a fact.
Spencer Radler can't code, Paul.
Spencer couldn't get to class on time.
That's
that's an OU quarterback tradition, though. I watched Baker Mayfield get called out for being late to class and then just not show up for the rest of the year.
Incredible. I'm pretty sure Duriel one time tried to buy him Duriel definitely tried to buy Baker a shot at Logie's the Thursday night before we lost to Iowa State in 2017. So
that's a life lesson right there. You don't show up on time to class. Next thing you know, you're living in Cleveland. So right there, students, go class.
Do you want to end up in Ohio? That's how you end up in Ohio. Anyways, all right. One final overhyped, underhyped. Drake Stoops. Jameson?
Over, just because of his last name. I think he's very good. I think he has good hands. I think he's more talented than people give him for. People hype him up just because he's the fanboy. He's, every team needs this, whether this, in any sport. It's once he goes in, everyone loves him. That's just the hype. But I'm saying the talent, I think that people need to give him more respect for who he is, because I think from what we heard, even though he was a walk-on, he would have gotten an offer from OU just from all of the tape that they saw on him, saying that he could be a productive player, but they just gave him the walk-on because his dad gets him free tuition anyways, and it saved him a scholarship spot. He's on scholarship right now, and there's a reason for it. And I think that he is talented, but definitely overhyped just because of all of the fanboying.
I think I'll go a little overhyped. Very, very, very good player. I wonder if there's really that much of a spot for him out there this year. But hell, we've been wondering that for his entire time here, and he's been producing very, very well. So I'm going to go just slightly over in terms of all of OU's wide receivers. I don't know if he cracks the lineup if you're going for the best, but he will absolutely produce this season. Ty, over, underhyped.
As respectfully and with as much reverence as possible, I have to say over, only because people know about him now and he gets that hype because of his dad. But I will say, and I want to say before we move on, like you guys touched on, you can argue that, anything because of his dad, but his dad did not get him play time in legitimate game. Like Drake Stoops gets legitimate game time play. I'm not talking about like garbage time, we're up by 45. Every team has their like practice squad out there, and the coaches or the former coach's son is out there. Like Drake Stoops is playing in competitive games when it's close. He has the only thing he has against him is his height. He has the skill. He absolutely has the knowledge. And growing up at OU, potentially maybe more than anyone else on that squad. He is tremendous football player, but I think because of his dad, he gets that hype and he gets those, like 15-yard catches and everyone's going Stoops. So I think I have to say this year he's overhyped. He was underhyped when people didn't know about him and people assumed he was there because of his dad, but yeah, over.
Yeah, definitely. He was literally there like the first year Stoops was at OU in 1999. There was a picture of him and his brother Isaac as literal infants on the field. So he has grown up in Norman, as close as it gets. So overhyped, but not that overhyped. He's definitely earned a lot of the hype. I just think it's really just a sign of how deep the wide receiving core is.
Yeah, he's earned it. He was on a career scale. He's been under
for sure. Let's keep this thing a moving. We have not even gotten to the defense yet, so we're going to touch on the offensive line. And frankly, it's been a bit of a big mystery as to what it's going to look like. Bill Bedenbaugh has kind of kept this thing close to his vest. Obviously missing, not having Adrian Ely and Creed Humphrey. Big steps, big cornerstones that are missing from this O-line, but you have to kind of trust Bill Bedenbaugh to put together a good line. Biggest questions, who's going to be center, and how we'll talk a little bit about the transfers later, but Jameson, who do you got at that center position?
Yeah, let's just hit the whole offensive line as a whole.
Yep, let's do it.
Because we're running long. Andrew Rame, I think pretty much, I don't know if it's already been announced, but I'm pretty sure it's well known within the community that he has won the center position. They've been saying it for a while that his intelligence he's so talented that it was just a matter of time. We thought Chris Murray would be a guy that had that on lock. They liked him so much and they wanted him on the field, but it looks like they wanted him and Rame onto the field, and it looks like Murray's going to move over to that right guard. So therefore, that now the right guard is taken, that's going to push Tyrese Robinson from the right guard position out to the right tackle, because they also have to keep Tyrese Robinson and Marquise Hayes on the field as well, because they're also talented guys who've been there for a really long time. So now that makes it where there's only one left tackle position, one starting tackle position left, and that's between Anton Harrison, the now sophomore and played some starting snaps at freshman last year, and the Tennessee transfer of Wanya Morris. Wanya Morris is definitely more talented than Anton Harrison. Anton Harrison's a huge athlete and showed that, and we saw that with his PFF grades and QB pressures allowed, why he was so much better than Swenson, but still didn't get the respect. I think that shows you how much Bedenbaugh cares about. You have to know my system and all the little intricacies. I don't care how good you are, but if you do everything the way I want you out there, that is better than you and how talented you are at that position, which makes me think that Anton Harrison will get the starting left tackle job over Wanya Morris, because Wanya is still learning the system and looks like from reports that are going around that he is doing decent, but not to the level of Anton Harrison of picking up the offensive line mechanisms.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about O-lines, and there's a reason why there's one of the best trophies for offensive line outside of the Remington is the team award, where they pick it up, because if one guy in the O-line is bad, then the entire line is bad. Everyone has to do their part. Everyone has to work with the system, or else the whole thing falls apart. So the offensive line, like you said, scheme matters, and listening to Bedenbaugh, who obviously is one of the best in the business, that is the move right there for sure. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he spins up, what he has going. Ty, any thoughts on the line before we move on?
Only line take is that we're super, super lucky to have Bedenbaugh at OU. Still, he is, I think, in any level of football, currently the best line coach there is, hands down. He definitely has the flexibility to go anywhere. And I think we are super, super, super lucky to have him, from recruiting to development to execution, which are by far the big three pillars of college football. He's excellent, and I think that I not really a line guy, don't really know, but I trust whatever he's putting out there 1,000%.
Absolutely, as do I. Let's move on to the other side of the ball, and let's move on to the other line. Honestly, the defensive line has always been the focal point of the kind of the bigger issues with OU's defense. But last year, as we saw with the incredible Ronnie Perkins, as well as Nick Benito, Isaiah Thomas, and Perrion Winfrey, who all three of those return, things are changing at OU. And it looks to be like this defensive line is going to be the core of OU's national championship run, particularly on defense. Jameson, is that the case? Is this D-line going to be the difference maker for the defense this year?
100%. If you throw in Nick Benito as a guy that plays on the D line, I understand he's kind of part of the linebackers as a rush backer, but let's just throw him in. Those first four guys are going to be huge. I think also what really helps is we feel very confident in guys, we're like 8 to 10 deep that we could put them out there and do really well. At the DN position, Isaiah Thomas should be filling in. He played both that and tackle last year. He's a guy who shows versatility. At the D tackle, Jalen Redmond can go in there, play a couple snaps, not have to play all the time. We can put in LaRon Stokes behind him or slide Isaiah Thomas over. At the nose tackle, Perrion Winfrey is the kind of guy that can come out this season and make a huge name just from his body type and the height that he got, where he could get in the backfield extremely easy. If he finishes the plays in the backfield, he will be one of the best D tackles in football this year. And then lastly, Nick Benito. Analysts love him around the nation. People are calling him one of the most underrated college football players this season and a future first-round pick. Can he continue that in all of those numbers? I think so. In this Grinch system, the guy who's on the rush always looks good because his goal is to get the football no matter what. He doesn't have to worry about anything. And Benito shows that he can do that. We are extremely deep. Reggie Grimes can come in and play on the end. I already mentioned LaRon Stokes. Josh Elson at the nose tackle. Marcus Stripling can also come and play at the rush. Clayton Smith, the new freshman, he can also come and play at the rush. And there's just more names I can keep on going. We have plenty of guys in this D-line. We're stacked at the front, very, very talented, and some great depth.
And that the D-line is so key to the speed D system because it relieves so much pressure on your quarterbacks and your secondary. Because if you're having to make the quarterback make snap decisions, always having pressure in your face, that's huge. And I gotta say, it's a great D-line. Love Perrion Winfrey, love Nick Benito, but the guy I have circled, Isaiah Thomas, my guy put up some big stats last year. 8 sacks, I believe, on the season in 2020. I feel like there's a lot of star power on that D line, and Thomas is just kind of overshadowed a bit. I could see him having a massive year, and he's the depth is what separates it. It's not just one guy that is wrecking things. It is a full unit, and I'm pumped. Ty, who's your standout on the D line this year?
I think I'm gonna have to go. It's gonna sound kind of goonery. I'm gonna have to go the entire D line, just because not just how we're talking about it, but how if you go and look at really any media that really covers OU in depth, like they know what they're talking about. This is the first year, and I can't even think of how long, where we're talking about a D line that we're not just hoping that it's good enough. Like, we're talking about a D line that there's higher expectations and an expectance for them to really be able to perform on a national level. And that's the key. Like, I don't want to sound, disrespectful to the other teams, but within the Big 12, just having a high power offense is generally enough. But that's where really OU has been failing, especially in the D line and being able to be just really gritty and hard nosed on defense when it comes to the postseason, when we're playing teams that aren't of the Big 12. And I think that that's really going to become key for us here, more so than the cornerbacks, more so than the secondary and the linebackers and everything else.
Yeah, for sure. It's about when you get to playoff time, having the physicality to exert your will against these top tier O linemen. because it just is harder to move past SEC linemen. And like you said, that whole unit has to be good, has to be intense. I think they will. Let's move on to the linebackers a bit. So if you kind of look at, especially if you don't count Benito as a linebacker, it looks like it could be a little thin, but I honestly think there are some really good players on this in this linebacking core. Really big fan of Brian Odom, excellent linebackers coach. Jameson, who's your standout as who's your OU standout as a linebacker?
Got to go back to the day one. Yeah,
I was about to say, is it David Ogwebu?
Yeah, it has to be David Ogwebu. He's just a physical specimen. And he's still learning this linebacker thing because he got recruited as a rush. We got to always remember he got recruited as a rush, transitioned to a middle linebacker about a year or so ago, and he's just picking it up like it's nothing. He's so athletic, and at his size and his height, it's going to be so crazy to see how well he does in this system with such a great D-line in front of him. And he has such a great running partner next to him at the wheel, and Brian Asamoah, because Brian Asamoah is just a rocket. As soon as he's shot at, he goes and he fires up gaps and he blows up plays. David Ogwebu, he can play sideline to sideline with his athleticism and stop what's going on, and Asamoah can make the hype. And plus, we have depth. Like Caleb Kelly, we're not even talking about Caleb Kelly as a guy that has been former 5-star and a guy who's been in the system for a long time. He's going to get some snaps whenever those guys get tired. And, we also have Deshaun White, who's a guy that we considered one of our better, if not our best linebacker at one point whenever we were kind of down on our linebacking crew. So we are completely fine. And plus, we also got to talk about the younger guys and Shane Witter and Clayton Smith that have also been showing out. Like this front seven, we have so much depth. It's going to be crazy to see how many guys that we play. Yeah, and it's honestly, it's just crazy to think that David Ogwebu is even a linebacker now.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. It's crazy all that's happened, but I'm excited. It's going to be a very intense front seven. I fully agree with you there. Ty, is this the year it finally works out for Caleb Kelly?
Funny enough, I was really confused. I just tried to Google. I guess apparently Google has a new feature that's linked to like student accounts. So I was trying to Google Caleb Kelly, and I was just coming up with Canvas messages and the classes he's currently enrolled in. Because I guess I'm signed in on my OU account. But yeah, I think that he's valuable just for the length of time he's been in the system. He's almost our age. I think he's like a year younger than us, which is kind of crazy. But I think he's important. But like you guys talked about, and like I kind of touched on with the D line, is when it comes to defense, it's really a not that offense isn't a team thing, but you can't have one star that sort of carries the game, because the opposing team's offense is going to find that weak link and they're going to exploit it as much as they can. So it's really about everyone being consistent. And I, again, like the D-line, am confident that we're fielding a linebacking core here that is going to be, maybe there's not an outstanding star, but, and hopefully, knock on wood, we're not disappointed when it comes into the season. But I can't really identify a weak link or someone that's outstanding as a weak link when it comes into the season. I think that's than any one individual.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there, for sure. All right, let's move on to what has probably been the scapegoat for years of the defense, the defensive backs. Obviously, Brendan Radley Hiles no longer at OU. So that, depending on how you feel about him, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. But, there's a lot of personnel turnover besides Spooky. You got Trey Brown and Trey Norwood. Both have left for the NFL. So, with all this turnover, do you think there's going to be some improvement?
Yeah, you would hope so. Our front seven is very solid, and hopefully they get to the point where they can help our back end out. I feel very good in our outside cornerbacks. Those were guys that showed definitely some flashes. Woody Washington, the transition from safety, showed that he's a ball hawk and this guy can stay with the wide receiver and turn his head like not many cornerbacks could do in the past and actually play the ball. Then also DJ Graham, converted wide receiver. Here we go again. These are not true corners here. Coming out and playing really good ball as a young guy and as a sophomore now should come out and have that number one cornerback position over a guy like Jaden Davis. But now we get to the points where are we a little bit shaky. Nickelback. Is Jeremiah Cradell going to be the starter? That is probably that and left tackle are the two biggest questions of who our starter is going to be. You would think Cradell would be the starter just because he knows the system a little bit better. But Billy Bowman's athleticism, the way he played and the way we saw him in the red and white game, it's just the way how twitchy he is. You can see he is going to be a better player than Cradell. It's just a matter of whenever he's going to get into the game. And then lastly, moving forward into this position, we got to talk about the safeties. Pat Fields, Delaren Turner-Yell, probably at the starters. Probably Pat Fields is going to be the new Buki or the new guy that we're clamoring for him to get out of the lineup and put in Key Fields as that at that free safety position. But Patrick Fields is a team captain. He's a high character guy in the locker room. It's hard to bench a guy like that. So I'm sure that's going to be a mantra moving forward. But yeah, I think that's what's going to be our starting lineup in the secondary.
Okay, I like it. So, Ty, last year, I believe you said that you thought the secondary was going to be one of the strengths of the defense. How are you feeling about them this year?
Okay, so that was kind of a cold take last year. I will say I just skimmed through the OU roster. There might be an exception here that I'm mistaken on, and heights can be sort of misleading when it comes to roster listed heights, but the shortest person listed anywhere on the secondary at any level at OU is 5'10". Most of them, as in like a 60-40, are over 6 feet tall. And that's just across the spectrum of secondary positions and then levels of play, which is really, really good because that's been a criticism of OU for a long time is, okay, we got these dudes in the secondary, but they're like Buki, they're like 5'6". So like it doesn't really matter. And then anytime he actually tries to hit someone, it's a targeting because he's having to launch. So that's super exciting to see a depth and height there. I think that I personally am expecting I don't want to say a lot from Woody Washington this year, but I think he really outperformed expectations with how young he was last year. So I'm expecting that he will, at a minimum, meet expectations this year, which I think are fairly high but realistic. And Woody Washington, when it comes to all the secondary, is the person I'm most excited about.
Yeah, with Woody, he exceeded expectations so much that you kind of wonder if there'll be a dip or a plateau or something. But you hope for improvement. And his biggest thing was always instincts. He came up with some big plays last year. Very notable that interception he snagged against Sam Ehlinger that should have killed that game but didn't. And yeah, I think he could be a pretty good piece. Key Lawrence, of course, interesting to note with his situation at Tennessee or trying to maybe get adapted, and of course Billy Bowman, like Jameson said, fighting for that nickelback position. But Jameson, I want to ask a very specific Billy Bowman question. Where would you put him on the field if you had Lincoln Riley powers to decide whatever you?
Yeah, I think that you give him a couple of games where he comes in the second quarter, plays that second rotation at the nickelback position. And if he shows out and he definitely looks by the eyeball test better than Jeremiah Cradell, and Cradell is missing assignments and he messes up a couple times, you slot in Billy Bowman and you put him in at that nickelback position. He's not the 6'2" cornerbacks that we all been clamoring for, but he's an absolute stud of an athlete, a near 5-star kind of guy that we have in our secondary that wants to play secondary rather than be wide receiver. That is extremely valuable. And even though he's a freshman, that is a kind of guy that can be a huge cornerstone of our secondary moving forward and just brings more excitement and more of a turnover chance. I understand we haven't seen much from Cradell, but just the way that, Billy Bowman plays the balls and the way we saw in the red-white game and how he jumps routes and he plays aggressive would be more to what I think Alex Grinch would want in this defense. So give Cradell a chance because he's earned it. He's been working in the ranks for a long time. But if he does show any kind of weakness or if Billy Bowman plays exceptionally well and they have no choice, play him. But I would not be surprised if he's starting in the midseason.
I just think Bowman physically is a specimen, and just in terms of his ability, I think it's best to just he should get some burn at any position at some point, even if it's just running a couple routes to alleviate some stuff. Hell, hand the ball off to the guy at this point.
He is a true freshman, so we got to not overload him. And if he's a guy that we think that comes down to our end game this year, that could be a guy, could be a starting nickelback in the postseason. I don't want to overdo him. I understand some people are talking about who else could play the running back position. We're trying to think of whoever could be an athlete coming out. Let Brian Darby, the wide receiver, do that. Don't let Billy Bowman do much. Let him completely hone in into that nickelback position. That's what he's been doing during his time here, and focus on that. We don't need to put him at free safety. We got plenty of people there that can come in, like a Key Lawrence that could take over the Patrick Fields job. Focus on the nickelback. He could win it, and he could be there for the rest of the season.
Yeah, fair enough. We've almost made it through the entire roster. Every position, but we got to wrap up what some believe is the most important side of the ball, the special teams. Gabe Burkich, obviously excellent. No need to talk about him there. But I got to ask, who would you have fielding punts? I'll let you start on this. Who would you have fielding punts? Who would you have returning? And do you think the special team is going to be decent this year? They kind of had a bad year if you look at the rankings overall. Could this be a rebounding year? I know we lost our guy... we lost Beamer Ball, but hopefully the spirit of Beamer Ball can live on. Ty, who'd you have returning punts and returns? I guess kick returns.
Yeah. So again, the main storyline, and shout out to Coach Beamer for moving on to South Carolina. That's awesome. He will be tremendously missed at OU. Just beyond special teams, I think he's an excellent coach. So I want to preface, my first talk about special teams this year with that. I think we all wish him the best. Great person, great coach, and I think he's going to do well. Personally, I gotta go. I gotta go again with sort of a big time primary of Washington Mims out there returning. Just because I think he's our best dude for that. I think because we have the depth, there might be some load management considerations, and I think we might see some interesting different takes. Obviously, the coaches have been at practice and are trained professionals, or at least paid professionals in determining these things. So I think we could see some interesting things when it comes to punt return because of our depth at receiver and everything else. But yeah, the biggest special team storyline is the loss of Coach Beamer on to bigger and better things, and I think that will impact us. I really do.
Absolutely, I could see it, being a hit for sure. Jameson, to wrap this up, final thoughts. Your take on special teams, loss of Beamer, and how you think they could make an impact this year.
Yeah, I think Marvin Mims at punt returner is locked in, and he will get those for the first half, and then they'll maybe experiment. If you look back at just OU in general, who's been our punt returners? CeeDee Lamb was a punt returner. Even though I think he was the most explosive athlete that I thought could break off a run for a touchdown? No, but he's a guy who's going to catch the punt and get what he needs to get done. Marvin Mims, the most reliable hands, the most reliable wide receiver, and next up, Drake Stoops would be a type of guy that would be at the punt return. We like reliable on the return, not as much flashy. Flashy would be on the kickoff return. I think a guy that we should look at there is definitely Billy Bowman. I think Billy Bowman would be a star bringing back the kicks and would kind of, what you're talking about, get him the ball as much as we can. Let him do that because, kickoff return doesn't take much studying and much film, all of that. It's more so just getting it and just letting the guy go. Other guys, the kickoff return, the guys I already said, and also, like a guy like DJ Graham who's an athlete coming out of that definitely could be back there as well. But I think the biggest conversation with special teams moving forward before we end this conversation, I think it is extremely blessed that OU got a transfer punter from Arizona State and Michael Turk. He's a senior, has been there for a while because Reese Munchow has been less than, great at the punting game. probably have been our weakest position for the past couple of years because the man can barely punt it 45 yards. Michael Turk has been absolutely showing him up in camp and has easily won the job, even though he's been here for maybe a month or two. So it was very easy to take the job, and I think the staff knew that whenever they were talking to Michael Turk to get him to come over in the transfer portal. So the punt game should have an absolute pickup. And just moving on, if we just be remiss if we didn't hit the rest of the positions. Long snapper, Casey Kelleher is still here. And I'm not a fan of everything that went on with Spencer Jones' situation, but he is still our holder. And he, I don't know how they view him in the football realm nowadays after the absolute embarrassment at Logie's. I think he should be embarrassed.
That's a tough go. That was a tough go for sure. I got to say, new punter, he is killing it on the content game, showing off all the facilities and, some of the drop of, shoes and clothes and stuff. I think he's doing good. So he's putting that NIL to good use. All right. Let's wrap this thing up before my neighbors at this apartment tar and feather me for how loud my dog's been. Thank y'all so much for listening for that, by the way. Anyways. All right. Jameson, Ty, we have football on Saturday. I can't wait. Y'all can't wait. Final thoughts. Let's wrap this thing up. Ty, I'll let you start.
Honestly, I'm just excited. I'm excited that OU football has come. It's been a long off season for sure, in my opinion. I'm excited for what we have in store this year, and I'm excited that we have a little treat of a surprise with a surprise home opener coming up. So I think it's going to be a great weekend, and I think it's going to be a great season regardless of the outcome. And I think it's a great time to be an OU fan.
Absolutely, it is. This is going to be a good year. I can't wait. I absolutely can't wait. Jameson, final thoughts.
I'm very excited. It's great. No. Seriously, the biggest thing in this game, I think, is definitely the Eric Gray and Kennedy Brooks. I'm absolutely excited to watch that, and then definitely the running back behind that, and then Billy Bowman on the other side of the ball. Everything else, we see a lot of solidarity. Obviously who's going to be the left tackle, but that's not too exciting. Nickelback, running back position, really fun to watch. Stay there the whole game. Students watching this, please stay as long as you can. This was a blessing we even got this, and let's see this depth that we have, because it's going to be key for us moving forward if you want to win a national championship.
Absolutely. I can't wait. It's going to be a awesome atmosphere because, folks, let's be honest. Last year might have been one of the worst college football years I've ever seen. Atmosphere sucked. I know the lines were good and everything, but let's be honest, that wasn't – it kind of felt off. I was happy to have it, but this is a great return to the sport we all love, and it is a great time to be a college football fan. Excellent time to be an Oklahoma football fan, and I can't wait. I'm so jazzed to get this thing going, I cannot wait. I mean, this is an absolute treat. I hate how it happened, but I cannot wait to get back to Memorial Stadium and watch the Sooners. I tell you that. So, all right, folks, that is all we have, believe it or not, for the 2021 Oklahoma football preview. I would like to say we got a lot coming down the aisle. I have forgotten how to talk at the 1 hour 14-minute mark. But we got the weekend spread coming up on Thursday. Make sure to check that out. All of our picks, all that good stuff, as well as the Schooner simulation coming out as well. If you remember that from last year, NCAA 14, sort of simulation preview, it'll be very good. We're going to be running those all season long, and some more stuff coming. But I would like to thank our partners at the Pigskin Podcast Network for for helping us with this show, partnering it with us, and can't wait to do more awesome stuff with them down the line. But yeah, folks, talking season's over. It's time for football, and I hope y'all just have an excellent college ball Saturday. James and Ty, thank y'all so much for coming on, as always, and looking forward to making some picks on Thursday.
For sure, yeah. pay attention to our sports, to our picks podcast. It's coming out on Thursday. It's going to be good stuff, and if you actually want to listen for betting advice, Ty, Bobby, and I, we have our takes, but Blake, he actually says some legitimate stuff and does really well. Obviously, his record wasn't as good as Ty and I's, but what he says, when you can tell whenever he actually has a very serious piece of information that he dove into the weeds to get. So, yeah, definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely check that out. We got a lot of cool stuff coming. And hey, for our actual, we had a lot of stuff planned for the first home opener. So that'll be exciting as well. And we might sprinkle some other stuff in here along the way. Just keep tuned to the Schooner Pod on Twitter at Schooner Pod and Instasooner or Instaschooner at Instaschooner on Instagram. So, all right, for me, Jameson and Ty, this has been the Schooner Pod, and we will see you next week where we'll actually recap a game. I can't wait. Boomer Sooner. Have a good one.